Previously on John Bradley Episode 2. John Bradley, a former international assassin, was framed for the murder of a Spanish presidential candidate. The criminal organization he once worked for is determined to silence him, planting evidence that links him to the crime. But when John crosses paths with Brittany, an FBI agent investigating a separate murder in Loma Vista, California, they realize they need each other. Brittany needs John's connections to infiltrate the criminal organization, while John is desperate to clear his name and find the real killer of the Loma Vista victim. Together, they've managed to infiltrate the organization's network, but with each discovery, the web of secrets grows more dangerous. There's so much more to unravel, and their time is running out. Season 1, Episode 6 begins. It was mid-afternoon in Monaco, and Richard had just returned to his hotel suite when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw it was a call from the company's IT center. His brow furrowed as he answered, stepping into the hallway to take the call in private. "Richard, we've detected something unusual," the voice on the other end said, calm but firm. "Your profile's been flagged. Someone's been researching your data over the past few days. Be careful, there could be eyes on you." Richard's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "Do you know who it was?" "Not yet," the IT specialist replied, "but we're looking into it. For now, avoid any unnecessary exposure." Meanwhile, in the hotel suite, Brittany had been waiting for Richard to finish his call. The moment he stepped into the corridor, leaving the door ajar, her instincts kicked in. Her eyes darted toward Richard's laptop sitting on the desk. This was the perfect chance to install the spyware Natalie had given her. She couldn't miss the opportunity. She quickly moved to the desk, her heart pounding in her chest as she opened the laptop. Her fingers worked fast, plugging in the tracker. The small program loaded instantly, embedding itself deep into the system. But before she could exhale in relief, Brittany heard the faint shuffle of footsteps returning toward the room. Richard was coming back. Panic surged through her. She yanked the cable free, closed the laptop, and rushed back to her seat. But she wasn't fast enough. As Richard stepped inside, he caught her standing too close to the desk, her posture stiff and uneasy. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice curious, not yet suspicious, but the weight of his gaze lingered on her. Brittany's mind raced. If she didn't act quickly, the entire operation could be blown. She had to divert his attention, make sure he didn't even think about the laptop. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Then, to her own surprise as much as his, she pressed her lips to his, kissing him for the first time. It wasn't just a distraction, it was a calculated risk. Richard stood frozen for a brief second before he reacted, kissing her back. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer, his earlier suspicion melting away as the moment overtook him. Brittany pulled back gently, her heart still racing but for different reasons now. She smiled, trying to keep the situation under control. "Wasn't expecting that," Richard said, slightly breathless, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "I was going to ask if you wanted to have dinner tonight, but, well, I think you just answered that for me." Brittany let out a light laugh, though beneath the surface, her pulse was still pounding. She had narrowly avoided disaster. "Dinner sounds perfect," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What time?" 8, Richard replied, still grinning as he reached for his jacket. "I'll pick a good spot. Something private." Brittany nodded, thankful the tension in the room had eased. As Richard turned away to pick up his phone again, her mind was already working on the next move. The GPS tracker was in place, but the danger had just increased. If Richard's profile had been flagged, it meant someone in the organization was watching closely. She would have to stay one step ahead, play the part convincingly, and keep Richard from finding out her real intentions. But for now, she had secured her position. Dinner would give her more time to probe for information. Yet, the kiss lingered in her mind longer than she expected, and she couldn't deny the strange pull she was starting to feel toward him. As Richard prepared to leave the room, he glanced back at her, a softer expression on his face. "I'll see you tonight then." Brittany nodded again, watching him go, the gravity of their mission weighing on her. The moment the door closed behind him, she exhaled a shaky breath. She had just barely escaped detection, but now the game was even more dangerous. With Richard becoming more entangled in her web of lies, and the organization growing suspicious, Brittany knew that their mission to take down this criminal empire was teetering on a razor's edge. The restaurant was dimly lit, the soft glow of candles casting a warm ambience over the table. Brittany sat across from Richard, elegantly dressed, trying to maintain her composure despite the swirling thoughts in her mind. The wine flowed freely, and Richard, relaxed and charming, had been talking for the past hour, sharing stories of his life and work. His guard was down, and Brittany listened carefully, her detective instincts sharp, picking up on every detail. "So," Richard said, swirling the wine in his glass, "are you local here in Monaco?" Brittany smiled, shaking her head slightly. "No, I'm from Atlanta, USA," Richard replied, raising an eyebrow with curiosity. "What brought you to Monaco then? Business? Or pleasure?" She took a slow sip of her wine, playing it cool. "Holidays," she responded casually. "A little break from the busy life back home. What about you? Why Monaco?" Richard leaned back in his chair, about to respond when his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it briefly, the name on the screen causing a slight shift in his expression. "Excuse me," he said, picking up the call. Brittany watched him carefully as he listened on the other end. The conversation was brief, but whatever was said seemed important. He replied with a simple, "Okay," and then hung up, slipping his phone back into his pocket. He turned back to her, a smile quickly returning to his face, as if nothing had interrupted the moment. "I was just thinking," Richard said, leaning forward slightly. "How would you feel about accompanying me to Madrid tomorrow? I've got a chartered jet lined up." Brittany's heart skipped a beat at the sudden invitation. Madrid? This could be a pivotal move in her investigation, but she had to keep up her cover. She flashed a polite smile and shook her head lightly. "Oh, sorry, I can't make it this time. I have a party to attend with my friends tomorrow night." Richard's eyes flickered for a moment, and Brittany could tell that he was disappointed but trying to hide it. His relaxed demeanor returned as he nodded, understanding. "Ah, I see. Well, I wouldn't want to keep you from your plans. It's just, this trip is important, and I thought it would be nice to have your company." "I understand," Brittany said softly, sensing there was more to the trip than just leisure. Richard had just been informed of a meeting with the company's leaders, and it was likely this Madrid trip was connected to that. She couldn't let him know that she was aware of the deeper layers of his life. "But don't worry," Richard added, his smile warm. "I'll be back soon, and when I return, I'd love to spend more time with you." "Of course," Brittany replied, her tone smooth. "We'll have plenty of time for that." As the dinner date continued, Brittany kept her charm up, but inside, she knew the stakes were rising. The company was moving fast, and Richard was a key player. Her mind raced with the possibilities. Madrid could be a critical meeting for the organization, but she had to tread carefully. If she played this right, it could lead them one step closer to bringing it all down. John stood in the corner of his hotel room, the faint hum of traffic below barely audible. His phone buzzed, and Natalie's name flashed on the screen. He answered quickly, knowing that any call from her could be crucial. "John," Natalie's voice came through urgent. "We've intercepted something big. An attack is being planned by the organization, and this time, it's going to happen in Berlin." John's pulse quickened. "Berlin? How do you know?" Natalie explained, "We've decoded a transmitted message sent through the company's secure network. The spyware Brittany installed on Richard's laptop gave us access to certain encrypted communications. It's fragmented and heavily coded, but I was able to pull enough data to figure out the location. They're planning something major, but I can't decode the full message without more resources." Brittany, who had been listening in on the conversation, raised an eyebrow. "Does Richard know about this?" Natalie sighed, the sound of her typing coming through the line. "Richard isn't looped into all the details, especially those that don't concern finances. The network they use operates through a closed-source communication system that allows members to send messages across the globe without relying on telecom companies. Each message is fragmented into smaller networks, providing additional layers of security." "Then why did the message hit his laptop?" Brittany asked, her mind racing. "Even though he's not directly involved, the company's system sends the message across the entire network before fragmenting it further. Richard's device likely picked it up, but it was encrypted. I can see bits of it, but without military-grade tech, I can't decrypt the rest," Natalie said, a hint of frustration in her voice. John frowned. "We need to know exactly what they're planning and where." Natalie sighed again. "I've done all I can with the tools I have. I'm going to need help if we want to crack this completely." Brittany's mind raced for a solution, and then she reached for her phone. "Let me call the FBI's IT division. They might be able to help." Within moments, Brittany was patched through to the FBI's cybersecurity unit. After explaining the situation, the team quickly got to work decrypting the message. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for a response. Finally, the decrypted information came through. Brittany read it aloud. The location is Madrid. The meeting will happen in a secluded area outside the city, and the attendees include high-ranking members of the organization. Date and time are confirmed for tomorrow evening. John's eyes widened as he processed the details. This could be our chance. But we won't be able to go to Madrid ourselves. Richard has to take his laptop into the meeting for us to listen in on their conversation. The spyware you installed will transmit the audio back to us. But we'll need him to have the laptop in the meeting. Brittany nodded. The spyware won't be able to see their faces. John thought for a moment before offering a solution. I have a contact in Madrid. He can go in, take photos, and get out before they even notice. Brittany shot him a look. You can't trust anyone right now, especially with the organization already suspecting activity on Richard's devices. We're walking a fine line. John remained calm. The contact is solid. Plus, he won't go into the meeting room. All he needs to do is install a hidden camera in the hallway leading to the room. That way, we can track who goes in, the time they spent, and later identify them through the footage. Brittany's expression softened as she considered the idea. That actually sounds brilliant. We can use the camera footage to piece together who's attending and gather enough evidence to take them down. The plan was starting to take shape, but there were still many variables at play. They had to move fast, and the risk was high. With the clock ticking, John and Brittany exchanged determined glances, knowing they were inching closer to dismantling the powerful criminal network, if they could pull this off without getting caught. In Madrid, Lucas moved with the precision of a man well-versed in deception. He was the perfect picture of a gentleman, dressed in a crisp black two-piece suit, polished Oxford shoes, and carrying a leather briefcase. As he entered the building where the criminal organization would meet, he made his way to the customer service desk, exuding calm confidence. "Good evening," Lucas said with a warm smile to the woman behind the desk. Her sharp gaze softened as she looked up from her Apple desktop computer. "Good evening, sir. How can I assist you?" "I'm here for the new technology conference," Lucas lied smoothly. "Could you tell me which room it's being held in?" The woman tapped on her keyboard for a moment, checking the schedule. "Room 110, sir. First floor, down the hallway to your left." "Thank you," Lucas nodded, keeping his charm intact. He turned and headed toward room 110, but as soon as he was out of sight, he pulled out his phone and opened the digital building plans. His real target was room 219, on the second floor. That room was no ordinary meeting space. It was where the organization's high-profile meeting was going to take place, heavily guarded by security cameras and the organization's personal security team. Lucas had done his homework. He navigated the halls, avoiding any areas marked with security camera blind spots, and took the back stairs to the second floor. He moved like a shadow, barely a presence in the quiet corridors. His goal was to install hidden cameras in the ceiling near the entrance of room 219, the very room where the criminal leaders would gather to discuss their next move. The hallway leading to room 219 was sleek and modern, but it carried an unnerving sense of isolation. A few security guards were stationed at key points, but Lucas knew how to avoid their sight lines. Using a small, discreet screwdriver, Lucas quickly but carefully pried open the ceiling panel just outside room 219. He installed a high-tech surveillance camera, virtually invisible against the white ceiling tiles, its lens perfectly positioned to capture everyone who would enter and exit the room. His heart raced as he heard footsteps in the distance, but he moved swiftly and sealed the ceiling panel without a sound. Just in time. Satisfied with his work, Lucas took the back stairs again, returning to the first floor. He made his way out of the building, blending in with the late evening foot traffic. His real task wasn't over yet. By 11 p.m., the facility had emptied. The lights were dim, and the usual hustle of workers and conference attendees was long gone. Lucas sat parked across the street, using his mobile phone to monitor the surveillance feed from the cameras he had installed. Luxury armored cars began rolling in one by one, their dark windows and polished exteriors gleaming under the streetlights. As each car pulled up, Lucas watched intently, capturing every license plate and analyzing the individuals stepping out. Men in tailored suits and sharp expressions moved with authority, disappearing into the building. The camera inside the ceiling was also doing its job, capturing the faces of each attendee as they entered room 219. Lucas saved each image, each video, and began transmitting them directly to John and Brittany in Monaco. The intel flowed in real time, names, faces, license plates. Every small detail counted, and Lucas ensured nothing was missed. From his vantage point, Lucas knew that this was a high-stakes operation. The criminal organization had no idea they were being watched so closely, their private meeting now under the scrutiny United States. Lucas' task was perfectly completed without any trace. "Good job, Lucas," John spoke over the phone. While the meeting went on, Brittany and John, including the FBI team on the case, were as well listening. Courtesy of the spy bug Brittany installed in Richard's laptop. "This is insane," Brittany screamed as she listened to the terrific plan by the organization. Pacing around the room, Brittany frustrated, and John sitting focused on getting details and thinking of the next action. They have the faces and no plan the organization is going to embark next. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next week for episode 7. Before you go, please subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss the next episode.